Today's the day. Deep dive into my favorite budgeting app, Goodbudget. Whether it's adding accounts, managing debt, processing transactions, working with unallocated income, we're gonna review it all. My name's Garrett Weldon, and this is my channel, where we talk about personal finance and what I'm learning in business. As I learn, you learn. Everything we'll be talking about is time-coded below. If you need to jump to a specific section, do it. If this is your first time with the Goodbudget app, stay here for the whole tutorial. And if this information is helpful to you, subscribe below. And here we go. First things first, you're gonna come to goodbudget.com. It'll lead you right here to this webpage. Go ahead and click this button, sign up. It's pretty simple. Input your email, create a password, and it can actually be a very basic password, and then you'll pick your plan. There is a free plan and there is a paid plan. The paid plan is $7 per month or $60 annually. Is it worth it? Yes. Let me give you two examples as to why. The first is this right here, unlimited accounts. So if you have more than a checking account, think checking, savings, or a credit card, you gotta have unlimited accounts. And then the second one, envelopes. If you're gonna be segmenting your income into more than 10 envelopes, which as you start using this, you likely will, unlimited regular envelopes is the way to go. So you'll go ahead, sign up, email, password, and get started. Once you're there, it'll bring you right here to the home page. Hi, Garrett. The first thing we need to do is add our accounts. So you're gonna come in here to the account tab, and I know the envelope tab is here, and some people will say add envelopes first. However, if you have any debts that you're gonna be tracking or utilizing within the Goodbudget app system, you need to add your accounts first. So come to accounts, hit add, and then you'll be able to work through each of your accounts. So checking account, make sure you input a balance, and that'll be what your current balance is. And we're gonna do this live on mine. I'm gonna set this up as if it was my budget, and then moving forward when we review budgets, I'll just then utilize my current Goodbudget app. Again, this is a software I've been using for 2.5 years that I absolutely love. So we'll start with checking. The total I have in checking right now is $5,320.18. Let's add another account. For me, that is money market, $5,848.89. So those are the two primary accounts that we'll be using from checking and money market. And then credit cards. We as a family have 2 credit cards. I'll call the first one REI. It's our REI card. Yes, this is something we intend to pay in full every month. If it's something that is a debt load for you, then you would put this in a different place. I recommend only using credit cards when you're paying them off in full on a monthly basis. And the current balance there. When you start Goodbudget, to make sure that everything reconciles, it is beyond helpful if you can structure it so that your credit cards have a $0 balance when you're loading them in. Take the time, pay them off in full from your checking account, let that all be reconciled out so that as you start here in Goodbudget, it's a $0 balance. So we'll click done there, add a second one, which is our Capital One. Again, a $0 balance, done there. And then we'll come down here to adding debt. Adding debt can be a little confusing, so I'm gonna walk you through our current debt, which is our house, to show you how to structure it. So I'm gonna call it house. The current balance on our house is $238,909.75. Working to pay off. The other option is pay in full every month. No, working to pay off because it is debt. The monthly payment for us is $1,334.64. Select an envelope. This will create a new debt envelope for you that will make more sense once we get to adding envelopes. So here you will select new debt payment house as envelope, and your interest rate mine is 3.99. That's how you're going to input debt. You can do this for cars, you can do this for other situations. You'll see there are some nuances in it once we dig into it, but this is how you can set it up. So we'll go ahead and click Done. No commas. Click Done. So now that is set up. So we've got all of our accounts set up, and we'll go ahead and click Save Changes. After adding accounts, you then add your envelopes. So you'll come here to the Envelopes tab, and let's get ready to add all of our envelopes, or how we segment out, in essence, our income. This is where we get to truly into budgeting. And if you want more tips and tricks of how to set up your budget, I will link above to another video of mine where I dig in to help you determine how much you should set aside in each account or each envelope that you're utilizing in your budget. You'll come here to Add, and you can start adding your envelopes. I like it to start on the first of the month. That's just how we in our family, from a budget standpoint, look at budgeting. It's always on the first of the month. So you'll click here, Add, name the envelope. Let's start with food. And the amount. The amount here is how much you intend to allocate to that envelope on a monthly basis. So this is a great place, and you can adjust it as you move forward, as you become more familiar with your budget or you need to make changes. But this is where you document how much you intend to put in it on a monthly basis. So food, add. The other thing, if you do want things to be grouped together, for example, you can put colon groceries and colon eating out, and that will group those together once it's all said and done and processed. I don't like to group them together. I like them very segmented out for when we get to the reporting feature. So I go ahead and add food, how much on a monthly basis, and the next, transportation, and how much on a monthly basis. And you keep doing this through and through for all of your envelopes until it looks like this. Done. You can see I have now gone through all of my envelopes, have titled them, and have again assigned how much I anticipate to set aside on a monthly basis. So a few things to point out that are important to understand when you're setting up an envelope. Each envelope works like a miniature savings account so that it can hold more and more, and also it can go negative. And that's okay. That's how Goodbudget works. And those are the important things to help, in essence, in variability, and really just help you from a long-term perspective know what you're doing. So for example, car. Setting aside $250 a month on car, that's not because we have a car payment. That's because I know one day we're going to need to buy another car, and it would be nice to have money set aside so we can pay for it in cash. So this envelope gets $250 in it a month, but has no withdrawals on it. The other thing is savings. I don't have a specific goal to set aside money on savings, so you can just input 0. And that's really where I'm going to represent our money market account from an envelope standpoint. The other thing is there is this feature down here called More Envelopes, and you can use that to create envelopes that are specifically designed to save up for a certain goal. I mean, say you have a specific vacation that you know you need to save $1,000 for, you can create that feature here. I just like to, in essence, for vacations, know that every single month I set aside $50. So it continues to add up and continues to pile up so that when an opportunity or trip comes, I've already got it saved. I'm planning in advance. The other nice thing is this over here shows you what you've budgeted, i.e. what you need to have coming in on a monthly basis in order to cover and fully fill all of your envelopes on a monthly basis. Once you have that completed, you'll go ahead and hit Save Changes. It now brings you back to the main page where you can see you have your envelopes, 23 for me. The number underneath, again, is what you intend to set aside each month, and you'll see that each one has 0, meaning we haven't put any money in them yet. And then if you come up to the top, you can see unallocated. So $11,169.07 is unallocated, and that is representative of the money you have in your checking and money market, $11,169, that you now need to put into envelopes. You need to assign into envelopes. So here is how we're going to do that. You will come up to Fill Envelopes. In the Fill Envelopes feature, there's two tabs, New Income and Unallocated. I never use this New Income tab. I input all of my income in transactions, which we'll get to later. So you'll click on Unallocated. The first thing to do is look over here. This is how much you have and you need to allocate into your envelopes. I like to name it, and how I name it is August 2020 budget. That's the last time we've created a budget for our family, or in this situation, you might put October 2020 budget. Remember quick fill as and name that again so that you can reference this in subsequent months and know that you'll always be using, in essence, the date, the closest date to which the current month is, i.e. whenever your budget has been last updated. So go ahead and set it like this, and then once we fill each envelope, we'll save it, and it will save it as a quick fill. And I'll show you and walk you through that as well. So in food, now we need to assign $350 into food, green line. Transportation, $200. Other, $75. And you keep doing that based on what you had planned to budget until it looks like this. Completed. You will now see that each envelope is full with the amount you had intended to budget on a monthly basis, and my savings account is the total that I have in money market. You will also notice, because this is your first time setting this up, that you're going to potentially have additional money over here that is left unallocated. And that's just because you already had more money in your checkings and in your accounts than it takes to cover your monthly budget. And we'll address that in just a moment. This is in essence to set up your budget that we are calling October 2020 budget. So go ahead, and once that's done, click Save. It of course brings you back to the main page. Let's go back into Fill Envelopes so we can see what it's done, and then we'll come look at the envelopes individually. So back to the Unallocated tab, the first thing to look at is you now have this quick fill called October 2020 budget. So next month when you're budgeting, you can come in and just click October 2020 budget, and you see it immediately pulls in all of the numbers that we had gone through and assigned for our October 2020 budget. This is great because then on an ongoing basis, it lets you set your standard, or really what we're basing our budget on, so that it's just you can repeat it on a month-to-month basis. And then if you need to make any individual changes for that given month, you can come in and make those changes. Maybe for whatever reason, the next time you do it, it's only $100 in transportation for whatever reason. That's fine. So that's the power of the quick fill. Let's go ahead and cancel that out, since that was just a demonstration on what a quick fill is. We'll come back into Fill Envelopes. And because this is your first time bringing in your checking accounts and bringing it all together, so now you'll see that there's this money that is still unallocated. And there's a few things you can do with it. One of the decisions is just to leave it in unallocated. And that's not a bad decision, because the end goal is to, in essence, age the money in which you're budgeting. So it's not always off your exact last paycheck, but that it's money that's aged for 30 days. So that, in essence, what we're using to budget for October was money that came in during September. And what we used to budget in November is money that came in during October. So that you're never, in essence, budgeting the check you just got. You're always budgeting the previous month's checks. So you can go ahead and leave this in unallocated to start aging your money immediately. Or the second option is to come in and to add it to a few envelopes that may need to be bolstered up just a little bit as you're starting out, to really get you in a place where you think you need to be. So for example, you might say, I'd really like to add, another $700 into my house fund to get ahead on that. I know that realistically, the money that was in my checking, there was a little bit more set aside for trips. Same thing with home improvement. as well as medical. That's really where some of that money should be allocated. And you keep doing that until you get it to a point where it's zero. And so let's put the rest in here. And this other category is important. It's the catch-all. It's the miscellaneous. It's the things you didn't realize you needed to budget for. They just happen on a monthly basis. So once that's all done, you should be at zero at this point. Go ahead and click Save. So now we've taken care of not just setting up a quick fill budget, but also addressing what was ever left in your checking or money market or savings account as you're first bringing this in and first integrating with Goodbudget. Now we are at the main screen and you are set up to where you can see food, transportation, other, and you now see how much is in each of those envelopes. That's the top number in bold, continuing all the way down. So the next thing that we need to consider is what happens as you start to use money. How do you add transactions? We're going to come up to this tab to talk all about transactions. Go ahead and click it, and you'll notice there's 4 tabs across this top banner, top ribbon. We'll address each one. First, expenses and credits. This is your day-to-day spending. This is, I went to Smith's. You'll input that there. And it was $75. And which envelope is that coming from? It was food. Which account? I put that on my Capital One credit card. Save. And you can see that that transaction is now added here, and that $75 came out of your food budget. And if you come over to accounts, your Capital One card now has $75 on it. And this is how you add expenses. The thing with Goodbudget when adding expenses, you can always do it via your phone as well. And that's the great thing. There's an app. So right as you're at the place of transaction, purchasing something, you can input it into your phone. The thing they don't do is allow it to sync to your banks and sync to your credit cards. You do have to do it manually, which is good. It's okay. You do need to spend time on your budget, just thinking through it, talking through it, spending time with it, and so you do need to manually add each of your transactions. So another example, coming in here, who might the payee be? This time, let's say we had our utilities bill, so whatever your city is $48. The envelope is utilities. This one comes directly out of my checking account, and save. Back here, you'll see that is now an expense, and utilities has been decreased, and you come up to the accounts and your checking account. If you go into that, you'll see that it has been pulled from your checking account. So that's how you add transactions, and you'll want to do that for every transaction. One of the things that we need to be clear on is what happens when there's a credit. So let's give a few examples. Say you return something to a store and you get a credit back on that. Or you went to dinner with a group of friends and you, in essence, carried the whole bill and then sent everybody a Venmo to pay you their portion. That should not be recorded as income. That will screw up your reports. That should be reported as a credit. So how do you manage a credit? Venmo, for example, and you hit negative. That makes it a credit. Negative makes it a credit. $12.50. Envelope, we'll say that that was at food. The account, that was on my Capital One card, and hit save. So now you will see, if we go into our food envelope, that there was a credit of $12.50. And if you come over to accounts, you will see on your card that there was a credit of $12.50. So very important that you manage credits in the expense, in the transaction tab under expense credit, and that you put a negative in the amount. Next tab is the transfer tab. This tab, in essence, lets you move money from different accounts or different envelopes. And it's really a very important feature. So the main way that I use it is to represent paying off a credit card. So I will come and let's just say, what have I been using? My Capital One card. And how much the current balance, 62, can't see it, 57, 62.57. And instead of an envelope transfer, account transfer from checking to Capital One, okay, so 50. And then you can hit save. And what's really cool with that is that basically represents in Goodbudget that you've paid your credit card. All the envelopes will be reconciled accordingly because you've already pulled money out of there and we're in essence housing it on your credit card. And then you pay your credit card off and it moves money from your checking to pay off your card. So you go into checking and you can see, yep, sure enough, from checking to the Capital One card, $62.50. You go into your Capital One card and you can see $62.50 was placed on your card, so your current balance is 0. The other way to use transfer is, of course, between envelopes. My preference is to not transfer money between envelopes. I would rather let an envelope go negative to represent to me that I may need to look at my budget or that I've overspent in that category for that month than transfer money back and forth. And let me give you an example. Say you have $150 saved up in repairs for your car and you go in for service because you need some repairs done and the total tab comes out to $200. Instead of transferring money from one envelope to your repairs envelope to make it $200, let your envelope go negative by -50. Why? Because if you're budgeting correctly and setting enough aside for repairs, next month you'll add $150 back into that envelope, and instead of being in the negative, you'll now be in the positive $100. And you let those accounts just build. It lets you really feel and see if your budget is accurate and if you are appropriately allocating your money. If you can just always come in and transfer money from one envelope to the other, it's really as if you haven't taken the time to set what your budget needs to be. There's a video that I've done that helps you understand how much you should be setting aside for each budget category so that these type of things don't happen, and when they do happen, you know it's just like the example I gave you on the repair example. The next tab is income, and this is where I input all of my income. So for me, being self-employed, I would put GKW LLC amount, let's say this was $2,000, select the account I want it to go to. You should likely always be picking your checking or your money market. Really, where do you get it deposited? For me, it goes into checking and I hit save. Let's walk through the cascade events that now happens. You'll come into checking and you will see a $2,000 addition there. And if you come into your envelope tabs, you're now going to see $2,000 is unallocated. And it's like, yes, perfect. We've got income, it's coming to our checking account, and this is letting us know we haven't put it into envelopes. So as a reminder to put it into the envelopes, we would come click the Fill Envelopes tab, come over to Unallocated, and it's represented right there, so we can start filling the envelopes. Anytime you want to go back to the main page, you can just hit that Goodbudget sign. So back into the transaction button, into income, that's how it is used. You can schedule this. So if you have a very predictable income that you know is coming in on the same day, you can tell Goodbudget to place that into your checking account that day, that time, so that it is just built in. The next tab is a debt transaction. If you have assigned an account a debt, you cannot, in essence, mark it as an expense. It will even tell you, right? If you come in and try and click which envelope you want, and it's going to be a debt payment here, it will tell you, recording a debt transaction, use the debt tab. So the debt transaction is, again, for anything you've assigned as a debt. So in our situation, it's the house. Mr. Cooper, $134.64. It's a payment. That's the total on the house. It will break out based on your interest rate, principal and interest. The thing it doesn't do, likely you have an escrow account that's pulling in your taxes and insurance. Ours is $174.97 on a monthly basis. You will need to input that, and if you do that, this should be accurate. how much is going to principal, how much is going to interest, shows you the inefficiencies of a mortgage, which we will be talking about in later videos. But this should be accurate. And then it says always coming from your debt payment, and then select the account. That will be checking. Go ahead and hit save. And then you can come here and see, sure enough, that has been recorded. Come down to your envelope, that's house. You'll see that that amount has been removed. And if you flipped over to your accounts into checking, that amount has been removed from your checking. Those are the 4, in essence, tabs within the transaction ribbon. There is another feature that I do want to talk about, and it's the reports. At the beginning, you may not think to yourself, I'm going to love the report features. But over time, I have come to realize that I do. So let's go in and at least talk at a high level of each reports. I will review these in more depth as I start, in essence, going through my monthly budget routine and showing you, in essence, from reports, how to use these and how to analyze them. The report feature is right here, and you can spending by envelope, spending by pay, spending by month, spending versus budget, spending by month, income versus spending, envelope balances, debt progress, budget allocation. You can play around with any of those. The 2 that I tend to use the most are spending by envelope, because I really like to see what's happened from each envelope. And of course, it's much better when you have months and months of data in here, because you can see what it is over time, and they will line up one month to the next month to the next month. And then the other one that I like is income versus spending. And this just lets you see, again, are you cash flow positive or are you cash flow negative? You can click off the expenses, on the expenses, off the income, on the income, and cash flow. Those are the 2 reports that I use most. Of course, play around with them, and as you get more data into Goodbudgets, the reports become more meaningful and more helpful. And that, by and large, covers how to use Goodbudget. And the Goodbudget app, worth its weight. It allows you to connect your phone with your spouse's phone so that when transactions are entered, they sync across devices so that both of you can be up to date. Goodbudget, without the Goodbudget app, it's just not complete. Get the app. So that, at a high level, is how to use Goodbudget. If this was helpful to you, please, please, please consider subscribing below. Come follow me as we go on our journey from personal finance, learning about business, because again, as I learn, you learn.